I think we're quite a nimble industry, and I think we're sort of quite able to navigate what comes at us. I think that most people, male or female, won't leave the house without having used at least 5 beauty products before they've walked out the door. And in that I mean personal care, everything from shower gels to shave creams to deodorants. So I do think that we're quite a secure industry, actually. And I do think that despite what's going on in the world, I think we'll still see some growth.
So, Millie, beauty is growing 4 times the speed of the economy. Why doesn't it feel like it's been taken seriously?
I think there's just historically there's the notion that it's fluffy stuff that girls play with, and it's not integral to communities and the well-being of people across the country. And so I think that, and also to be perfectly honest with you, society is very patriarchal, and so anything that is predominantly female tends to take a back seat. So the beauty industry, when we first launched the British Beauty Council, was larger than the automobile manufacturing industry in this country. Yet if a car manufacturing plant closed down in Milton Keynes, the government would be bailing it out. But if a eyeshadow flurry plant closed in Airedale in Scotland, it wouldn't get a look in. So I think it's to be honest with you, I think it's sexism, maybe a little bit.
Sexism in the beauty industry. Do you have an experience that could illustrate that for us?
I mean, I think if you look at the numbers, our industry, 86% of our businesses are owned by women in the beauty industry. More than 90% of our workforce are female. But let's say of the 10% that aren't female, those men hold the top jobs, even in our industry. So I mean, that's interesting in itself. I've, personally, I've worked for businesses where I felt as if I'm still not allowed really the top job. There's a sort of element of you can sit around the boardroom, but you can't be the chairman. So even in our industry that's predominantly female driven, you still get that. And yeah, I've walked into rooms with people that work in policy, and I've sort of talked about the industry, and they've said, let me talk to my daughter or wife about this, as if they don't wash or brush their hair, which I find astonishing. And you get that with a lot of investors as well. People want to invest in the beauty industry because it's dynamic and it's growing, but you still find a lot of investors not understanding a female-led industry or thinking it's just fluffy.
What do you think's driving growth, though, in the industry right now?
I think there's a lot of innovation in the beauty industry, particularly in the UK. And I think brands like Charlotte Tilbury have really led the way in showing that we can actually do as well as and even better than the Americans, the Japanese, the Korean and the French. And so I think that globally we've become almost synonymous with our makeup artists, our hairdressers, and the creativity that's driven them to create brands.
Would you say that skin care is the dominant element here?
What happens in the beauty industry is you tend to have leading categories, but they sort of, they're like racehorses. So skincare obviously has been very dominant for some time. Fragrance is now driving a lot of sales. Hair care and hair treatments. You've got a lot of scalp treatment products that have come out. So hair care is looking really healthy. I think that innovation has seemingly started with skincare of late in the past maybe decade or two. But I think that the other categories are definitely giving skincare a run for its money.
Are we seeing beauty and wellness merging?
I would argue that beauty is wellness, and I would argue that, if you go and get your hair done or you have your nails done, that it makes you feel well, makes you feel better. I think that the terminology has changed. It used to be, years ago, you would call a journalist a health and beauty journalist or a beauty and health editor. And so health and wellness has always played a strong part in the beauty industry and vice versa. So, but wellness has sort of been recategorized in a sense. And actually what's been really fortunate about that is it's included men for the first time in looking at our industry in a slightly different way. So longevity, biohacking, all those kind of supplement taking, fitness. It's now sort of almost the wellness has grown. And the fact that it's incorporated men has really helped with the perception of the beauty industry.
Just tell me a little bit about your organisation, the Beauty Council. What do you regulate and how?
So the British Beauty Council is essentially an advocacy group. So we lobby government to regulate. So we have, when we first started, we looked at various different challenges that the industry faced, some of the macro challenges. And one of the largest topics was aesthetics. So it's a growing industry. And you're talking about growth in skincare. Actually, the enormous growth has been in aesthetic clinics up and down the country. You can't walk down a high street without seeing one. But they're not regulated. So the practitioners that are working in there, the skills, the training, the education they've had varies from one practitioner to another. So we've managed to successfully get government to take this seriously, and within the Department for Health and Social Care, the bill that's coming up, there will be a ban on some very, very serious treatments that are carried out in high streets up and down the country, with a view to then licensing the rest of the industry so that all of the practitioners that work in the industry are on par with each other, so that there is consistency, and also so there's redress. So if you go and have a treatment in a salon and it goes wrong, unfortunately, if it does sometimes go wrong, we want to make sure that there's a registry so people can actually there is some redress and they can take action.
Because, of course, you've worked in almost every aspect of the beauty industry. Just give us your potted history.
So my dad's a hairdresser, so I started out as a 13-year-old shampoo girl when 13-year-olds were allowed to work. Or maybe they were never allowed to work, I don't know if they were. And then I ended up doing makeup, retail, PR. Obviously now there's sort of more advocacy, but the thing is that actually I realized very early on that you have to be quite creative and quite skilled with your hands to be able to work in the beauty industry, whether that is injecting filler or Botox into people, or cutting somebody's hair or painting somebody's nails. It's quite a skilled craft. So you either have to work very hard at it, or you have to be innately creative, and I'm just not very good with my hands. So what my brain tells my hands to do, it just won't do. So I realised at a very early age that all the different things I tried, I wasn't particularly brilliant at. So I kept sort of changing. But I really like the political side of things. And I think
makeup is political, isn't it? Beauty is.
Yeah, I think beauty, is, I always like to think that we wear it as sort of war paint. It's our armour. It's what we go to war with. And I think that it's, the industry has been overlooked for so long. And it is, as Britain's success story, it's one of Britain's greatest success stories, really, our beauty industry. And I think that now we've got a lot of female politicians, more so than ever before. I'm hoping it becomes more political, really.
So tell me, Millie, what does a heritage brand have to do to stay relevant?
I think it's really interesting. I think there are a lot of challenger brands that come along, and they don't always have the same longevity that a heritage brand has. And I think heritage brands, if I was to ask them to do one thing, is I would ask them to stop launching new products all the time to try to compete with the challenger brands, but to really focus on what their iconic products are. I think there's a real move to reducing consumption and reducing the amount of newness they bring into the market, and really focusing on what the core is of their product line. So, for example, with Elizabeth Arden, the 8-hour cream is the hero product. It's always been the hero product. It's what most people recognise, and focusing in on that as opposed to constantly, creating new products because you see some young brand on a counter next to you launching something new. I think it's about really focusing on what their core iconic product is.
Do you think there are too many brands?
I think there are always going to be a lot of brands. I think that there's a churn, so there are different types of brands. So those new challenger brands drive innovation of the sort of more heritage brands. They get them to look at what they're doing, which I think is helpful. I think that, and of course now that, you know, with a global marketplace, you've got brands coming in from Korea and Japan and the US. So, I mean, I love a new brand, so that's really difficult for me to say. I think that there are some brands that just don't have a long lifeline, so they're in and out very quickly.
And what makes a brand exciting these days?
I think what makes a brand exciting, I mean, I think sustainability is really interesting. I really am looking for a brand that has packaging that's not plastic, that is made from some innovative material that can be thrown in a compost heap. Things like that I think are truly interesting. I think I find packaging, new packaging technology is really interesting.
Do you think that social media has changed how all of this works, particularly how it's advertised to us, or has it just changed the gatekeepers?
I think social media has been really challenging for the beauty industry because on one hand it's driving sales and on the other hand it's damaging to our reputation because I think that there are no guardrails. And so I think that it's been a real mixed bag of emotions, really, social media. We've adopted it. We've taken to it really quickly. We were very much early adopters in terms of creating content on social media, but I don't know necessarily if we've managed to harness it for all its good. I think there are some real challenges and potholes there.
So, for instance, I mean, my Instagram feed, the algorithm is always giving me makeup or treatments for women over 50. How does the beauty industry deal with that generational divide? Do products have to be different for Gen Z and older women?
I would have said 10, 15 years ago that products should be multi-generational, but now that I'm almost 60, I think not. I think that there are some reasons to wear products that are designed for generations, but I don't think all products, no. I mean, I think that makeup, particularly, and maybe some skincare, I think needs to be developed with your age in mind. I think if I wore the same makeup my daughter, who's 19, wore, I'd look like it wouldn't sit well on my skin. I wouldn't even say what I'd look like, but it wouldn't sit very well on my skin. So I do think, yes, I do think some products need to be developed with age in mind. I think that using age to market products is appalling. And I would say that, you know, I do find sometimes the fact that, you know, I'm of menopausal age, I think sometimes marketing me products like that, I find rather disgusting, to be honest. I think that our industry has used negative marketing tools for a very long time. I think over the past 10 years, we've probably been a lot better at it. Since the onslaught of social media, we've been almost careful in how we're marketing products to people.
Yeah. I wonder if you think that the lipstick effect, this so-called phenomenon where beauty thrives at times of economic downturn, is still real.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it really is. I think, you know, you see an uptick in services, you see an uptick in sales of certain products. Like I said, fragrance is really driving sales at the moment. There is that sort of feeling of wanting to feel better or smell better, and scent brings on, you know, memories, obviously. So I think there is something about scent that's quite interesting. I think since the 2008-2009 economic crash, we've seen that, COVID, wars. I mean, it's been a pretty horrendous decade, and so I think that the fact that beauty is outpacing a lot of other categories only shows to prove that actually, when people are challenged with everyday life, you know, beauty does make a difference.
So the cost of living doesn't seem to be making much of a dent on the beauty industry.
I think the cost of living has made a dent on certain parts of our industry. And I think that, so for example, in the services industry, we see a real challenging hairdressing industry at the moment. I think the margins are very challenged because you only have 8 hours in a day that you can cut hair, and each appointment is costs a certain amount of money and you can only charge a certain amount of money, whereas with product you can sell endless amounts of product within an 8-hour period or however long you're open for, and then you can sell online at night. So I think the hairdressing industry is challenged with a number of things, footfall, premises, post-COVID, damage, debt, just the fact that there is a limited amount of days in the week and only so much you can charge for a haircut. So the volume isn't really there. So yeah, there are parts of our industry that are challenged. I mean, even now with, what's going on in the Middle East with oil prices increasing, you've got raw materials, being increased, the price of raw materials increasing. And then you've got things like travel and shipping, and so that there are so many sort of parts of the supply chain that are affected, but there's still consumer demand that you're not seeing change. So we have to adapt and be nimble, I think.
I wonder if there really is a huge difference between the £400 haircut and the £40 haircut, or indeed creams or products that vary hugely in price.
When it comes to product, I think there is, in a lot of cases, a lot of different technology that goes on behind the scenes. Sometimes there'll be proprietary ingredients and formulations that have taken a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of research, clinical studies, and I do think that's worth paying for. I would say that there are also some fantastic cheaper creams out there, but a lot of it is about the R&D and that what goes on behind the scenes. You don't always know what's behind that cream. I wouldn't pay for the extra packaging and the brand name. That's a given.
Do you think that consumers are buying sustainably?
I think that there's a certain type of consumer that is concerned about sustainability, probably the same consumer that's concerned about cruelty-free products. I think it's definitely growing. I mean, even, I've heard even in other countries like China, environmental sustainability and environmental practices are starting to become more sought after by younger generations. So I think it's a generational thing, actually. And I think as new generations of shoppers come in, they'll be more inclined to want more sustainable beauty products, or know. Also, because of transparency now, you can check supply chain, you can see where products are sourced. So I do think it's becoming more and more relevant, more and more important, thankfully.
I wonder if you think that beauty is still a route to upward social mobility.
Yeah, the beauty industry is a real beacon for social mobility because you can enter into it at any age with any level of education. It's a very diverse working community. So oftentimes people that come from lower income neighbourhoods or communities can really enter into our industry, and there is no ceiling. So I think in that regard, it is pretty amazing if you want to get ahead.
If you were a new brand and you were starting off with limited money, with limited capital, what would you spend it on? How would you begin?
To develop a brand? I would, if I had limited budget, first of all, I think you have to have good funding. I think good funding is critical. I would launch one really fabulous product. I don't think long of those days, I had a brand, when we launched Ruby and Millie, we had 365 SKUs. You don't need that many products to launch a brand. So I would launch one thing really well. And I think some of the new brands today that I really respect have literally launched one product that is changing the face of the industry, or a few products that are changing the face of the industry. You can build really slowly these days.
Yeah. Which new technologies would you say are actually changing behaviour? I
think biotechnology is really interesting because it's not only is it sustainable, but also it's not as affected by geopolitical instability, because you're not buying raw materials that require you to have global stability. You're creating them in a lab. So I think biotechnology is super interesting for our industry.
Is there anything you think that's overhyped? We know lipstick can't change your life, but
I don't know. Actually, I mean, I think putting a bit of red lipstick on is quite life changing sometimes. I met a woman recently who said she gets out of bed and it's meditation, medication, and then makeup. I mean, I think that I think actually that we underestimate the ability of red lipstick to change lives. Go back to, World War II, women were putting on red lipstick because it made them feel powerful.
I wonder what's coming that people haven't anticipated.
I think there'll be a fusion of aesthetics and makeup. I think the makeup industry will change fundamentally because of the sort of onslaught of aesthetics. And I think there'll be certain things that we won't need to use to make ourselves look more youthful. We'll have aesthetics that will be able to help us along the way. I mean, I'm still convinced at some point, eyebrow pencils, lip pencils, those kind of products, the technology will move. I mean, it's moved so fast already in our industry, but I'm sure that there'll be even greater technology to ensure that we can have, eyebrows, for the rest of our lives, that we don't have to pencil in without having to have the dermablading. So I'm sure there'll be things that will allow us to sort of almost make up more permanent without it being a tattoo, if that makes sense.
So when you look at the British beauty industry and you project in 10 years' time, do you think it will be as economically successful as it is now? Where do you see it in a decade?
I mean, I really do hope it will be as economically successful as it is now. I think that there are going to be challenges in supply chain that will have an impact on our costs, therefore have an impact on pricing. I think we're quite a nimble industry, and I think we're sort of quite able to navigate what comes at us. I think that most people, male or female, won't leave the house without having used at least 5 beauty products before they've walked out the door. And in that I mean personal care, everything from shower gels to shave creams to deodorants. So I do think that we're quite a secure industry, actually. And I do think that despite what's going on in the world, I think we'll still see some growth in the coming years.
Millie Kendall, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.